Right, afternoon everyone, and welcome to the OTB channel. As you can see today, I'm sporting my Northern Soul t-shirt rather than a Linux one, or my Speed Rider one, which Serge thought was quite funny I was wearing it while I was doing my Slackware video. Understandable. So just a quick word before we start today. Mixed reactions, I think, would be a reasonable comment on my Office 365 video. I sort of expected that. It was always going to be a contentious issue. Some very, very pleasant and nice comments on YouTube itself, but I did post it in a couple of Facebook forums or groups, and a mixed response is probably the best description. But anyway, moving on, we're going to do something a little bit different today. I'm staying on the Arch Linux theme, in two ways really. I'm using my Endeavour OS to actually produce this video, which if you've seen from my last update, I've now installed to hard drive. Very pleased with it so far. And I'm going to look at another Arch-based distro, which is quite new to the distro scene, called Trom-Jaro, which is very much the opposite of what Manjaro's been doing recently, which is looking at including proprietary software on their installation ISO. Let's get to it. Let's have a look at Tromjaro. It is a GNOME distro, so I'm not that comfortable with GNOME itself, but I want to look at its philosophy and why it's been launched and what it's all about. So let's give it a spin. So I got home from work last night, and as is usual, I flicked over to YouTube to see what videos had been uploaded, and the first thing I came across was Derek from DistroTube's latest video on Manjaro and their decision to ship their ISO file with a copy of FreeOffice, which is proprietary software. So not surprisingly, Derek was quite annoyed, and I know that I put Microsoft Office on my version of Linux a few days ago. That was my choice, and in my view there's a whole world of difference between choosing to use proprietary software, which many of us do to a greater or lesser extent, even if it's just proprietary NVIDIA drivers, but there's a great deal of difference in choosing to do that and having the choice imposed upon you. What Manjaro had decided to do is to remove the free and open source Office suite, LibreOffice, and replace it with this proprietary Office suite. And I agree with him. It was a dreadful thing to do. So it didn't actually take long for the Manjaro team to respond to the massive criticism that was released around their latest decision. And you can see in front of you the Forbes page. This is an article that was released at 6:08 this morning, and essentially they've reversed their decision. What they say is that the final 18.1 images now, depending on the edition and choice of the edition maintainer, are now going to allow you to select which Office software you'd like to install, and to not include FreeOffice at all. So I wouldn't be surprised if Derek hasn't had a major influence in terms of that decision. Let's hope the damage hasn't been done. They've clearly listened to what their users have said and what their critics have said, and fair play to them. You know, they've changed their mind quick enough. But what a strange decision it was to start off with. And this sort of brought me to look for alternatives to Manjaro, which has been riding high in the distro watch charts, which I know doesn't mean a great deal, but for quite a long time now. And it's earned a reputation for being a great arch system for new users. And whilst I was looking around the web, I came across a new distro based on Manjaro, which doesn't actually contain any proprietary software. And it's called Tromjaro. So you can see the Trom-Jaro website in front of you. And as they say here, we're a bunch of volunteers trying to make everyone aware that the game we play, the game of trade, is creating most of today's problems. From corruption to violence, hunger to bad products, data collection to privacy invasion, human-made climate change to waste, and so forth. So, we're not only creating awareness about this issue, but we create solutions. And one of those solutions, which they label as trade-free, is a distribution based on Manjaro, but which is trade-free. Now, this is a new term that I've not heard before, but they define it here by saying Manjaro can be seen as trade-free on its own because they don't collect people's data, ask them for money in order to use their operating system and so forth. But they still promote trade-based applications in their default installations such as Steam, Microsoft Office or Skype, and maybe other packages too. These packages want something from people, a trade, either money or data or attention. So Steam wants users to give them money in return for accessing games, Skype wants people's attention or data, and Microsoft Office engages in similar trades. Therefore, we've removed all of these packages and only kept plus added trade-free packages. On top of this, they've enabled the AUR by default and added their own repository. So, what have people had to say about this? Well, there is a post here on the Manjaro forum. I'm just trying to get my head around this idea of trade-free. What have they done to it? The theme that they use is Vimix. Okay. It contains minimal pre-installed applications. It automates backups every update. It contains native support for app images, flatpaks and snaps. I'm not actually against that. I've found them quite useful in the past. It's customized Firefox so that it blocks ads and trackers. Made it look a bit like Unity. And customized some extensions like Dash to Dock in terms of the defaults. Okay, so it's a GNOME system. Right, doesn't actually tell me exactly what it is, but Linux Insider has actually got an article as well, and they talk about a better Manjaro. Right, the bulk of the software changes and GNOME tweaking has to do with philosophical differences that drive Manjaro to be more user-friendly than Arch Linux. Right. So they've reduced the update check to once a week instead of daily. Users can customize that delay, however. They've done some tweaking to GNOME itself. In particular, they've moved the left corner, I don't know what you call that, navigation where you can suddenly navigate different windows. The hot corner, that's it. and the bottom line is it has its own look and feel. Right, okay, so it's a take on open source, if you like, but with very much a political theme behind it. It's Manjaro, but with a new twist. So let's give it a spin. Let's load it up in VirtualBox and see what we think. Okay, well, I'm feeling a little bit out of my depth here, given that this is a GNOME distribution that I'm about to fire up. I haven't used plain GNOME for quite a number of years, so I don't really know where everything is. But I've loaded up or downloaded the ISO 1706-2019, so 17th of June. I've attached it to VirtualBox. I've set it up to just do a standard BIOS boot rather than a UEFI boot, just to keep things simple. I've given it 8 gig of memory, and I've given it 2 threads of my i5 processor. So let's start it and see what happens. Right, so we get the standard Manjaro boot screen here. So let me change my locale. I have to say I've always quite liked this aspect of Manjaro, that it allows you to do all of this tweaking before you even boot the system. So the locale is now set to GB, driver free. Let's put non-free just in case. And let's boot it and see what happens. Oops, I've just noticed I haven't changed the keyboard yet. So let's just go down. Okay. Right, let's boot. If I can get rid of some of these overlays. I've got it in full screen, so we'll see how it works. Okay, it's booting up fine. So far, so good. I'm using bridge networking, so it should pick up its own IP address. A black screen, so we hope something's going on behind this and that it's actually booting. And, oh, indeed it is. And that didn't take long at all. So this is Trom-Jaro. I have to say that I was expecting to see perhaps a little bit of customization involved in terms of the branding, but it doesn't look like that's been done at all. It's still saying welcome to Manjaro. It has got a very Unity-like feel to it. Quite nice wallpaper. What has it got installed? Backup software, time shift, disks and gparted, email, Thunderbird. I see they've removed Thunderbird's own logo, files, which presumably is the file browser. Wow, those icons are big. Can we reduce them at all? Yes, we can, thank goodness. Okay, let's have a look at what else. G-Smart Control, no idea what that is. They've got Firefox, again with the non-standard branding. Manjaro Architect. Ah, right, okay, so this is if you want to install Manjaro Architect. I'm just going to come out of that. Media, GNOME MPV player, SM player, I have Mate. Their Office suite, they've stayed with LibreOffice. LSHW installed by default and the Manjaro hello screen. The settings menu with known tweaks installed by default. Tools, Cheese, Flameshot, KeyPass, XC, software update, SyncThing GTK, not a clue. Let's open up the system monitor and see where we're up to. Given that this is running in a virtual machine, that doesn't seem too bad. It's only using a gig of memory so far. It'll be interesting to see what the installed system uses on a hard drive. But as this is in VirtualBox, I would expect that to be slightly higher than normal. What else have we got? USB image writer, the terminal, and last but not least, a couple of torrent clients, transmission and WebTorrent. Okay, the thing that always strikes me about GNOME is these icons just look so big to me. They look like the whole system has been designed for a touch screen or a tablet. It turns me a bit cold, but each to their own. But anyway, let's get on. Let's launch the installer and see how it does. Okay, it's spotted British United Kingdom, so it's picked that up from the initial boot menu. It's picked up my location. Everything's set to UK. Yeah. What do I want to do? Let's just erase the whole disk and go for it. I see that all it's doing is creating a single ext4 partition. You've got the option to encrypt if you wanted. No swap partition at all. Okay, that's fine. So let's just put in my details, OTB, choose a password, log in with the same password for the root account, click next. Am I sure I want to do this? Yeah, absolutely. And let's click install. Before I hit install now, it's 3:41 as you can see on this screen. So for those of you who are interested in exactly how long it takes, and I know one of you made a comment on one of my earlier videos this week that it would be good to know the exact length of time it took. So let me hit install now. Off it goes. I'll pause this now and we'll come back once it's finished. And we're back. 15:48. So was it 15:41 we started? So 7 minutes. That's not bad. It seemed to stick at around 22-23% for a while, and then it just went on and completed. So let's restart it and see what happens. Right, I had to shut it down again. It didn't automatically unmount the ISO file, so I've unmounted that myself, and we'll see what Trom-Jaro does. OTB. I quite like the branding on the login screen. And we're back to, well, an installation, a hard drive installation that looks exactly like the ISO image, which is a good thing. Let's just open the terminal. Okay. So how much has that used? 6.7 gig of my 24 gig virtual disk. Fine. What about the monitor? You'll have to excuse me on this. I'm not used to using GNOME. There we go. System monitor. It's using about much the same as it was on the live ISO. Just under a gig of memory. CPU use, okay, it's settling itself down after it's booted. It's pretty low. 10-ish, 10-11%. Okay, that's fine. Now, I'm completely at a loss as far as how to operate this system because I haven't explored GNOME before. But I'm just wondering, how do we go about having a look at the wallpapers? Change background. Oh, that's easy. So it's on a right-click menu. Right, okay. Right, they've got a few wallpapers here. Let's try that one. It's quite nice. They're a little bit on the cartoonish side for me, but hey. Yeah, I like that. I think it's quite nice. So, what we have here then, by the look of it, is a modified and cut down version of Manjaro. I'm thinking that was oh, that's the audio, is it? Right, fine. What do they have for software updates? I'd be interested to see. So tools, software updates. Aha, they're using Pamac by the look of it. Yes, they are. Okay, well that makes sense. They said the AUR was enabled by default, so presumably that's enabled right from the word go. And a script called PackUI. Okay, so let's search again for yay. Have we actually got the AUR there? Let's go into our preferences. Okay, AUR support is enabled by default by the look of it, so that's good. Well, we should be able to find yay when I just search for it. Aha, it'll be in the AUR. And by the look of it, it's not yet installed. Okay, that's all I'm really going to do on this particular distro. I'm obviously not familiar with GNOME, but we have a cut down version of Manjaro. Looks nice enough, installs well enough. It's clearly got a political philosophy behind it, and if you want an option that removes all of those trade apps, as Tromjaro developers call them, give it a go. Let's have a brief chat about this, and I'll let you decide for yourselves. And that's Tromjaro. Seems fine. Very simple, similar to Manjaro. Would I use it? Well, I certainly wouldn't use the GNOME version. I'm far more comfortable in Mate. But different desktop environments suit different people, and if you love GNOME, it might be an option for you, especially if you're a supporter of the trade-free philosophy. I'm not sure about that, but nevertheless, the distro looked fine. I think if it wants to really create a market, though, for itself, it probably needs its own branding. At the moment, it just looks very much like Manjaro with a slightly different package selection. But it is, of course, still Arch under the hood. So if you want Arch, it's an easy way to install Arch, the Calamaris installer again, and see what you think. Always worth looking at different options, and this is what I love about Linux. We have so many choices, and choice is what it's all about. So, just before I finish, I've changed my webcam. I think, just from a subjective point of view, that the image is slightly better. I've gone with a Razer Kaio. It has a little LED backlight built into the webcam, which is quite hard to look at, but it seems to be lighting up this room better than the C920 I was using. I'd appreciate your views when you watch this back. So this is going to be it now until next Saturday. I'm away most of next week. I'll think hard about what I'm going to put out next week. Probably not something quite as contentious. And until then, well, like and subscribe, please. That would be great. Thanks for watching this. Hope you found it useful. Stay well until next Saturday.